Great. All right. Here we are at the end of these 2 days. I want to firstly thank profusely once again all of the invited speakers who have made these really, really, really moving, thought-provoking, rich presentations that have started something that we will be thinking about for a long time to come. I want to use this last session for us to really, really be in dialogue. This has been an incredible audience, an incredible group of participants online and here. And I know that there are many, many questions still in the room. And so we will be taking those. Please be thinking about them, prioritizing what you want to ask, who first and next. But I also want this to be an opportunity for all of the invited speakers to talk a bit more to each other, which is something that the format just doesn't necessarily allow for outside of all the many interactions we're having alongside the hub, but within the structure of one presentation after another. I want to use this opportunity for response, for questions within the group, and for, again, as I said, things that you want to bring up that may not have been said or that you want to say differently than in your presentations. And I think I'll just get us started with a couple of things to talk about and then really let this be as free-flowing as we can make it in a group of 100 and whatever here and many more online. So I was curious to kind of ask all of you. I was cheeky enough to prompt you and ask you really to think about keywords or concepts or ideas looking back at your many years of practice that really informed your work, that really stand out to you today in this moment as significant, and also to kind of highlight the kind of uniqueness of this platform and this invitation in a way, one that is not necessarily part of our usual curatorial work, to be so comprehensive perhaps in thinking about the long arc of our practices. And I wanted to just hear about perhaps what this experience and this thinking back has changed for you in some ways about what you're thinking about now. We've heard a lot about past projects. We've heard a lot about ideas, values, threads, priorities, urgencies. But of course, all of you are incredibly busy and involved in projects now and in the near future. And so this is maybe an opportunity to reflect on what these 2 days and your longer process of preparing for this hub, how that inflects your thinking around what you're doing now and next. So anyone is welcome to start, and we don't have to go in any particular order, so whoever wants to jump in. All right, you make me call someone out. Yes, Akansha. I'm only going alphabetically, I promise.
Something that I've been thinking through the last 2 days of presentations is this process of institutions thinking about who your peer is and how that changes as well. And Anne's presentation also gave us today a couple of lists of not just the institutions where you've been in positions, but also other institutions that you've been thinking with. So I was wondering also how you think under your leadership at Tate, St. Ives, and also before that, how that peership has changed. And maybe, and as I asked this to you, I asked this to myself and also others, you know. So this identification?
I mean, it was such a good question that I had never actually done before, and I think that was what's so interesting, because you're not necessarily so conscious of these patterns, but it is true that in terms of these, is it working? No? Yes. In terms of these networks, I mean, the one that I described at the New Museum was maybe organizations of different sizes. The one at Art in General was probably more like a group of peers of similar scales, if you like, and similar politics. And I think those relationships they were really built on trust. I think that's what those taught me, that if you can think together, you can be more adventurous and you can really interrogate what you're doing. So you have this kind of self-reflexivity, but you can also really learn from other people. And the kind of discussions we had about what it is to be an institution in all our various contexts, I think was really profound. And these relationships stay with you. So even though I'm not in that, like say, Art in General, What Now group, they're still there. They're still in my life because they became such deep friendships also. And that's the other thing that is really important with these relationships. And now we're about to start this Getty Sustainability Fellowship 6-year project, which will afford one artist, kind of times 3, 2 years to move across 6 platforms, if you like, 6 organizations to explore these topics. And several of these are in rural areas, and I think that's the difference. That's a real primary difference in terms of, what do these investigations mean when you shift it from an urban context? Because many people are surprised I made this move, because once you leave a city, your work is not as important. And I would argue that it really is. And your context might be different and your population size might be smaller, but it doesn't mean that there aren't any urgencies there. And the other aspect of it is that you have this network of people on the ground. You have the network of people, you're embedded in a real community. It's not a fictitious community, it's really real. And you're one of those under 11,000. Why is it doing that?
Sorry, it's me. No, it's not.
Is it?
Trying to,
Oh.
Fatima can't hear us. But could Fatima just tune into the Zoom feed and then on YouTube, sorry, so she can at least hear us. And then whenever she wants to speak, someone chats with her, or she sends a WhatsApp to Ahan.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, Anne.
So there are kind of parallel networks now that will intersect, because one of the purposes of this Getty supported project is that these artists really relate to community. And so they will also become embedded in the very communities that we're living and working with. And so in a way, these will coalesce. And I think that will be the first time in my life that that's happened, where it's really about the people living there and this international kind of group of people who have, kind of values and interests that we're pursuing. And I'll be really interested to see how that develops. And I don't know yet how it will, but that's definitely the goal. And so that for me will be new knowledge. And I can't predict necessarily what that will be, because even if I can predict it from an artistic perspective to a degree, I cannot from a community-led perspective, because we don't yet know what questions will be asked by them or what will be revealed. So for me, that's one of the most exciting things coming soon. Yeah.
Other responses
Other
to my
responses
question?
to finding peers. What does that do to one's own position? And you shift your vision. Vision shifts as well. In the companies that you find yourself, and increasingly, like in the case of encyclopedic museums or ethnographic museums, finding contemporary art as a way of bringing in more people and also activating their own spaces. And then contemporary art museums connecting, finding places for community and socially engaged practices to bring in more communities. So it begins to seem that there's all the more porosity within the institutions where we are building, though the terminologies are being exchanged and replaced.
Yeah.
But there is a lot going on, and so thus I wonder about these flexibilities, and it seems to me that there is a lot of room being made, but what is it towards, and how is it beginning to reflect in one's vision, in institutional visions, or mission statements changing, or is that groundwork also coming back in the articulations?
Over the last couple of days, like just these last presentations, I think, because I've been in this shift of slowly like coming out of a space of really 15 years of hell-bent desire to be the black sheep of the institution and completely burn it down and also make a new one, and loving it and holding it so dear, and I've been in a shift in the last year or so where I've been working on biennials. I'm working in a new city now, and in a more like festival context that doesn't have the ground of the institution, and being here with all of you. All of you are curators, some of you are also artists, I'm also an artist, and I really started to hear this kind of phrase, and I think Fatma, you said it you just said it directly, but I think somebody else did too, this idea of instituting as curatorial practice actually, and making space together, and hearing from such different contexts ways that that's been happening has been really inspiring. And I guess this question I've been asking for a while just started to echo even stronger over the last couple of days, with all of you holding space in different contexts with a lot of courage, is to think about how are you all and how can we decompose the violent systems that we've been trained to inhabit, and work in liberatory ways in spite of. How are you all doing that decomposing and grief work for yourselves and processing? Because it's something, there's a lot of examples of how, and there are answers. Some of them are with peers, some of them are seeking it in the work, in the artists we're working with and their vision, and then also learning from the communities that we're collaborating with. But I just wanted to hear if anyone had any direct answers to that.
Can the people outside?
Yeah.
Of course.
Because you were talking about grief work,
Yeah.
and sometimes one feels one is in perpetual grief
Yeah.
because there's one thing to the other that one is grieving, either personal or political. And something happened in Kolkata last year. There was a gruesome rape case in a medical school, but also in a hospital actually. But also more have happened since then. But that one incident, I think, when one holds so much grief, sometimes it's a tipping point of an incident that happens often, but that one incident really triggered the whole city, and many of us, so many of us, I can actually, if you do a raise of hands, how many of you went for at least one protest at the time? How many of you are from Kolkata? So almost everyone who's from Kolkata would turn up, and every day we do that. In the morning we'd come to work. Most of these protests were evening onwards, night. And at Experimenter, this would go on daily. And we'd talk about it. We would say, 8:30 p.m., Jadavpur, you went to Jadavpur, I went to this, and I went to Park Street, and so on. And then one day we called for a meeting, and we said, we can't do this in this way, and we have to articulate this in some way. How are we feeling? Can we just talk amongst ourselves? Which then led to a series of things. We felt like, given that our role is really, we have this platform, we have this space, so we then, for the next, I think, 6 or 5 months, worked on it. One with the manifestation of an exhibition that included 12 women practitioners, but across, so poets, activists, filmmakers from the 60s, people who had done work and articulated much better than us, who would then give a language to those who are not able to give language to that space. It was called Like Air I Rise. Many of you have seen that show. I don't even know whether it was powerful enough, but it was a lot for us, and that sort of worked for us as we worked through that time. Artist Bani was in it, you can look at it. And then, alongside that, we felt that what we really were trying to work on is fearlessness. So we organized, we canceled the hub, and many of you were already invited for it, and held something called Bekhofi, which translates into fearlessness, which was from a book that Kavita Krishnan wrote, Azad Bekhofi, which came after a similar rape case of Nirbhaya a few years ago. And that gave us a way to deal with grief. So just sharing something we did as, I mean, I don't think we are out of it, but gave us some sense of purpose, and it didn't feel futile. So we had to then cancel a show for the artist who was already scheduled, November, December being the gallery's prime spot. This show was not at all for, say, the market in any way, and things like that. So lots of decisions made, but it let us deal with ourselves at that time. I don't even know if we've dealt with anything, but something.
No, it's been really, I mean, the fact is that there is perhaps there's no one way. I think that the grief or the sigh I had at the end of Justine's presentation, which Amal heard, it's really something that stays with you, and it also makes you do the work that you do in many ways. And I think, you know, it's very kind of evident in many of the projects that have been laid out that there is, and maybe it's not, grief is not the only state or emotion or affect, but that there are very strong feelings, small feelings, big feelings that undergird a lot of these projects. And so, yeah, maybe the question is perhaps to think less about what this exercise of preparing a presentation has done to inflect your work, but to think about what feelings have surfaced or resurfaced over the last 2 days, over this kind of almost luxurious experience of being able to be in community and conversation around practice like this that you're carrying away with you.
Oh, so much going on in my head. I mean, there's one part of, I think, what Ratan asked all of us to think about that I don't know whether my peers here would agree, but, you know, you do the work you do, and then you're asked to present it. And I think there's an element to presenting it here. This is a very specific place, and towards which we might be post-rationalizing what we did when we did it. I felt that. That then made me think about how others will talk about what I've done, which made me think a little bit there about what are they going to say. And I think that's what I carry forward, which is, what have I got to do? What is the work that lies ahead for me? And am I going to let people down? I feel very emotional.
I think it's been an incredible 2 days. This is all of our first time, but the first time even attending it. I've just heard a few talks online. So thank you, Priyanka, Prateek, for really, I mean, I didn't know what to expect, and sometimes conferences and things, at least for me, can be very intimidating and maybe esoteric sometimes, but I felt that each one's presentation really made me think and everyone think in different directions, and somehow also you know, kind of reassure that similar kind of challenges people are facing, and also encouraging in the sort of work that we're doing, whether it's things like bookmaking or even dealing with communities, or so it's just reassuring to know that everywhere these are things, and from everyone's presentation I think the seeds have been planted, and I think that it's probably going to take us some time to process how so I'm actually really looking forward to what can come out. It's probably hard for us to say in this moment what would come out of this, but I think it's like seeds have been planted for this kind of cross-pollination, also in different contexts, different regions, geographies, and that's kind of mind-blowing to me, because I thought that it's always a little harder to because you're situating yourself where you are, but then it's always seems like a bit too far, but I think it just brought everything very, very close proximity. So I didn't think it would be, but it's a really emotional and invigorating kind of experience. So and thank you, Ratan. You've been a fabulous moderator. Very pointed questions, so like on the ball.
I had a lot to work with. But speaking of being together and being a fab, Fatima, I want to ask if you want to jump in. We don't want to lose your voice. Is there... okay. Okay, so...
Yes.
Oh, you have...
Can you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wonderful. Ça va? Okay. So just to say that actually I was afar, but I didn't feel that afar from you guys, because the way you hold the space and the way you create a thread for us to be able to join wherever people were was beautifully put together, and you were all very supportive. I really appreciate the fact that you ask us to reflect back, because we are not often asked to put ourselves in this position of reflecting on what we're doing and taking just the time to think about like what this journey has been so far. And also the way the conversation we had was articulated made me think that there is certain element of the practice that need to be emphasized in a way or another. But what you really create is a space where vulnerability was allowed. And this is very rare, because our parcours is made of lot of failure, challenges, questions, doubts, and finding ourselves in a community of people, of course, doubting, but also doing things and seeing that we can still make things happening. We can still being, how do you say, connected and not disconnected to the people with whom we are working and collaborating, and we are still true to our community. Is beautiful, but it's also okay to admit that sometimes things are challenging and it's not going through for different reasons. People are very different. And I think you create space for vulnerability. Independent curatorial practice can be a very, 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 how do you say, a very important space of loneliness. And what you did create is making us understand that actually it is not. It can be different, and you give space for that to happen. I've been very gifted to be working in a community already, but I can see it having you all sitting together and sharing with a lot of emotion what these 3-4 days has been for you, and it works. So yes, this is what I have to say. It's a beautiful space of vulnerability and a sense of home in something that's supposed to be very distant, but actually it's all these frontiers are just mind construction finally.
Yeah, I was looking back at my notes and something I wrote yesterday, and I don't know when I wrote it, but I wrote a breeze, a tempest, a whisper, a scream. And thinking about this notion of scale, the things that we do that interact with a small indirect community and the things that reverberate globally. And I found it really inspiring thinking about all these different avenues through which our curatorial practices articulate and the way that they communicate with publics on different scales. But maybe the breeze, maybe the whisper has more of an effect than the tempest or the scream. And thinking about the way that we interact with scale and the impact of that and what happens in art. I'm also thinking a lot about failure. I actually think failure is a beautiful and generative space. And a conversation that happened this morning over breakfast is that we live in a moment where we only see the successes of others, but so often we are actually made in our failures. And I think that something that's important to acknowledge is these spaces of loss, either our fear of letting people down, which I think is a very, very real thing to hold. And those potentials are actually sites of transformation and something that we need to hold on to and celebrate and hold as a deep sense of self as well.
Yeah, I mean, I very enjoyed these 2 days and also the questions that you asked, because I think having started this position like a bit more than a year ago, I felt like really like as in a tornado from my side, you know, being like catching up on everything, and so to find this time to also just like to reflect and be like, wait, what happened and what has been going until now, and how to put it together and to present it was quite an exercise for me, and that I really enjoyed. But also listening to each of us and kind of finding similarities with each presentations and like some things that I of course like didn't know many of the other curators that I met, but then just finding this point of these common points in the practices or in the way we're thinking and the way we dealing with institutions or with the artist really kind of like meant a lot for me. And yeah, I think it just kind of like make me ask like this whole questions of audience and public and the way we do it, for who we do it, what does it mean, what does a community mean actually. Those are all some kind of questions that I was asking myself before, and I'm glad to see that like kind of resonating with many different voices. And yeah, I mean, I think it's beautiful to see that we each do it in a way with a lot of cares and attention. And I think that's what matters, if we do it with love. And yeah, I think it was just, Amal was quoting yesterday Telfar, and I think I told you afterwards, Telfar saying like, not for you, but for all. And there was like this young writer from New York called like Simon Wu, who also wrote a piece about Telfar in this sentence. And he was kind of like comparing it to Felix Gonzalez Torres, who also said that his work was not for everyone, but for his lover, Jeff. Yeah. And so I think it's like if your work you do is also for the people you love, and be it like your direct lover or like the community you work for, then yeah, it is what my notion of art and curating is.
For all our loves in this room, what is on your minds? Questions, comments, observations? There's one here, and then we'll go this way.
It's nice at this time it's actually, the thing I wanted to say, and I just had no idea that I would say this today, I came here just to listen, is actually related to the work I do. So I'm Rituparna Roy, and I'm initiator of a museum project in Kolkata called the Kolkata Partition Museum Project. It's a citizen initiative, and in the last few years we've worked on the ground in Kolkata. We also have a virtual museum whose work is not complete. We are live, but we've shared only half of our work and not full. I wanted to respond to the grief work you were talking about. And that particular phrase, Priyanka, is so telling, especially grief work that surrounds violence. Now, as a partition museum project, this entire thing is premised on remembering violence to a great extent, you know. And obviously, as a commemorative project, we want to remember what happened, and we are focused on Bengal. It happened in 2 places primarily, on 2 sides of India in 1947. But we are also trying to remember the commonalities between the 2 Bengals, which are divided. So just not rupture, but also cultural continuity. But you know, every time, one of the things, one of the impulses has been to kind of contribute in our own way to try and see that the history of the past is not repeated. Because we live in extremely divisive times where hatred is nurtured, you could say, you know. So the thing is, but constantly we see violence around us, and constantly the originary moment of partition is, you know, we keep being reminded of it. Just a month back, 2 months back, India-Pakistan was on the brink of war, which didn't happen, but could have. And right at that moment, we were holding a special program with an artist, one of the most, you know, venerated artists of our times, Jogin Chaudhary, who is based partly in Kolkata and whose life has been completely shaped by partition, life and work. So our program was about that, you know, and we were not even sure whether we would be able to hold it. And every year, I can't tell you how depressed I feel. I start questioning myself that what are we doing? Here we are trying to not repeat the failures of history, but we Indians, at least in the subcontinent, elsewhere in the world as well, but since we are working here, you know, there's this vicious circle of violence that keeps repeating itself, which has an almost predictable script. It might happen in different parts of India, but it kind of follows a script that we all know. So the point I was trying to say is that in that program, this artist said one thing very nicely. He said that, you know, the best we can do, he was talking specifically about another very important moment of violence in India, 2002. It was a pogrom against the Muslims in Gujarat. And he said, you know, at that time, very few Indian artists actually said anything about it or did anything about it. And he did. So he said, I made work which was inspired by that violence, but not many people do. And the person who is in conversation with him, she asked him, what do you do? How do you stop this violence? He said, we can't stop things, but as artists, as deeply sensitive people, what we can do is try to the best of our ability to represent things, to try and begin conversations, to try and see that, you know, we at least remember something more than violence, that there are more things that connect us than divide us. And I think at that moment I felt a tremendous sense of, what to say, I kind of, it reassured me that, you know, the work that we are doing, you know, we are small and funding is a problem with us. And every year is a new year, every year is a more difficult year actually. So, but I felt that, you know, the only way to do grief work is probably just keep on going, you know. Thank you.
And remember that many others are also doing
yes,
it. Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Do you want to respond?
My name's Mario, and as somebody who's only worked in like artist-initiated or artist-run spaces, I think we're very well aware, at least in South Asia, that as institutions, when we start as alternative, as not-for-profit, as artist-run, artist-initiated, after a few years we get institutionalized because, of course, there's funding, there's network building, there's sustainability, there are many reasons. So somehow we kind of adopt a structure and we fall into that. But I think what keeps us kind of going is this idea of, and we've been speaking about this in the last few days, this idea of radical hope, radical care, radical hospitality. But I wonder, and over the past few years I've been thinking a lot more about the idea of radical rest, radical pause, a restructure, reparation that kind of sits outside of inclusivity checklists, and ultimately to think of failure as something that is radical. And how do you bring that back into the kind of freedom, into the kind of agility that we kind of began with when we were alternative? And of course I also speak about this from the work that Akanksha and Sharmini have been doing over the years, and the pace that they have worked with, only because I know them and their practice from over the years. But yeah, I think it would be interesting to also talk about radicality from the idea of allowing ourselves the space to be fatigued, to allow ourselves the space to grieve, and like grief as a form of perseverance in some sense. But yeah, just a thought, not necessarily a question.
I have lots to say on these things. We had a conversation between us afterwards, and I presented this thing because there's something that I think about a lot, working within institutions that uphold violent systems that we work in order to get funding to do dream things with people we love. There's always a demand for spectacle, visibility, and overproduction, which I think is really related to your question, is like part of survival and sustainability is presence. And so there's a real fear of not being present, even when you got nothing to give. So you're just doing that. So I like think about the power of invisibility and not being surveilled, which allows for many, many things. I just wanted to say that, and thinking about ways that, I've heard about like the amazing production grant that you have here at Experimenter, and like, in different economies, how do we support each other? This idea that artists support other artists is also amazing. And when I was at the last kind of things I was doing at Serpentine was like I created a fellowship for artists to get money, a grant, but they don't have to make anything with it. And I've just been thinking about like how do we kind of value that space of not doing for people in general, not just artists, lots of people. But it's a good thought, I think. Like how do we create a structure that allows for that non-spectacle moment?
It's also, just to respond very quickly to that, and then we'll take other questions, I'm sure anyone has questions, but I think it's also in the instituting differently, which is something that's come up quite a bit, because that genealogy is the word that I used to kind of ask Fatima about the kind of precedents, let's say, or the ways in which an organization like RAW has come to exist today, but actually looks back at histories of radical artist organized spaces, I wouldn't even call them artist-led spaces, do kind of give us windows into doing things differently, even in an institutionalized form, right? And so perhaps those imaginaries, kind of trying to find ways to hold on to those, even within the work that you need to inevitably do to articulate certain things for the structures that you have to show. It's always a very, very difficult terrain to negotiate, but I think there are possibilities even in talking to each other about how to do that.
My name is Shaleen Madwana. I'm an independent curator, and I have two questions. Both come from experiences within curating in the Asian, South Asian, and Indian context. I run an artist, and I've co-founded an artist and curator residency called Immerse, where we specifically lean into artists that are not coming in from Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta schools, and rather state schools of India. We try to not conduct the entire fellowship in English, in the language of English, just to kind of bring in multiple languages. In doing that, and in curating other public programs, be it at India Art Fair, one of the major things that I'm learning is that whatever we may do, it may not be enough, because the moment we're in a room and we put a door or a gate, that becomes a room, and then that becomes a space of power and privilege coming from us as well. The moment we're speaking in English, that's already alienating majority of my country. The moment we're trying very hard for inclusivity, there'll always be someone who's not in the room because we are. So I'm going far away from the Western canon of how to look at privilege, and to look at privilege in a hyper-local context. Maybe Pooja and Akansha know very well what I'm talking about. So this question was inspired more by Justine and Amal's conversation. One,
as curators, when you're on your trajectory, is it ever enough? And who is outside of the room because we're inside a room? We can look at this room as well, even though there's digital access. So that's one question to everyone over here. And the second one is more specific to Fatima. Academically, I work within decolonizing museum spaces. So that has been my research for 15 years. And one of the bigger questions always, which I resonated with in Fatima's presentation, was that if you create a hyperlocal context of raw material company, for example, one of the bigger things you learn is remove the Western canon and description of what a curator is, and then you come up with your own description. So I just wanted to ask Fatima, what was the non-Western definition of a curator that you arrived at, or that Raw arrived at, that Koyo generated with the amazing work that Koyo has done? I was curious to know about that, because in India, one of the terms we have is sutradhar, which is roughly translated to a connector of multiple thoughts and disciplines. So sutradhar is one word, but I have not found an equivalent to curator in the language of Hindi, which is one of the languages that I know out of 3 that I know. So, so one question to you all and one directly to Fatima. So.
I think in many ways it's never enough, but that's what makes it worth doing. This goes back to this concept of failure. I'm obsessed with exercise. And when you lift to failure. And that's like your aspiration. And then you push beyond that. And so it's this notion of it's never enough. It's never enough. It's never enough. And I think that's actually a really beautiful and liberating thing to aspire to, because then whatever you're achieving is enough in the fact that it will never succeed almost. And so I think you just need to keep pushing, and that's the space. And then there can be a point at which you just opt out, which is also okay, and somebody else can take, the mantle forward. Talking with Mario earlier the other day, we were talking about the notion of lifespans, that so often these projects, we think that they're supposed to succeed in the fact that they live forever. But sometimes you push something just to the point that it doesn't need to exist anymore, and that failure, that end of a lifespan, is a success in and of itself and will allow other things to grow.
I think what's in the same emotion is the mic. Priyanka's handed me the flower. So, this is someone who just said something similar as one of the online, Varsha Nair, as one of the organizers of Women Festival, Thailand. We have believed in which is 2001 workshop, which asks many artists not to make work. I personally think of failure as being very empowering.
Thank you. And we'll go to Fatima. Shannon, you want to comment on that? No, let's hear from you and then we'll go to
I just wanted to respond a little bit to Mario, what you were saying, and also picking up something that Pooja you mentioned when you presented, which was obviously this very specific context of the museum and the collection, and you had said that you tried as much as you could to find scope for mischief. And I was thinking about that and wondering, how, imagine if this Curators Hub was experimenters, cardiologists hub. Where is the scope for mischief as a cardiologist? That just doesn't exist. So where we are with that, it feels like, that's a big thing to have the option to do, basically. So Mario, when you're talking about being radical, I just want to say I don't want to be radical. But when I do, I want to be radical to something that's just rubbish, and that I'm radically good. Why can't we also think like that? Why do we always have to feel that, something better exists? We are, trying always to, I don't know, that bar is for us to lift and place where we want it. And I think that's I know that it feels very heavy what we're speaking about, but the grief that we're speaking about, which I'm sure means something to everybody here that's so different, and to even try to attempt to think about it collectively, I think it's just such an impossibility. But definitely one thing from having grieved myself, what I learned is you manage pain. You just manage it. You manage and you manage and you manage, and you share that management. Share that management with whoever.
And we are enough.
Yeah, Fatima.
Fatima, please jump in.
Hello. Oh, sorry, I'm delayed because I'm following the YouTube thing, and I'm sorry. I would like to say that I have the feeling that when we were okay. So let me answer regarding the curatorial word. I would say mbok, dox mbok, dalal mbok, ak yaatalal mbok, dooleel mbok. Mbok is a Wolof term in our geographies that means community. But Mbok don't encompass just the community. It is the community and the people with everything that they carry coming from the culture to which they belong. So when you say Dox Mbok means mapping what your community is or who your community is. Dalal Mbok means having and hosting and create a space for what this community carry in terms of knowledge and culture and power and energy and love, pour into the space that you have. So you always have a room for this person. And Yatal Mbok means created space for this Mbok to belong really, not just having just a bed into which this person can sleep, but created space for this person to have, or this group to have, a voice into what you're doing. What is the closest way of doing that, or being a curator in our context for me, is really being aware that this is what tied us and these are the bonds between us. And when I say Mbok, it's not the neighbor across the street only. It's beyond the geography and the territory in which we find ourselves. So I would say that this is what we do. This is what we've been taught, teach to do, and in our culture, but also like this is how we are holding our space. This is why we have always food gathering and a plate for someone coming in. This is why you're going to be always a phone away or trying to understand what is happening at Culture Laboratoire des Imaginaires, what is happening at Kirchosan, what is happening with, I don't know, the one that we have on the phone recently, or how to say Zora that come very recently, etc., etc. So it's beyond our geographical land and frontiers. And in this Mbok, there is a whole set of tools and elements and instruments that actually gifted you with the strength, the resilience, and the power to achieve your goal, but also to be able to welcome the loss, the grief, and also the failure. And I hope this answer as precisely as possible to your question. And if Mbok is not enough, I would have said pinch, because Row is also the place where we would be able to debate what wouldn't be able to be debated in the public street, in the street. It's gonna be this space where people will come to find shelter because we are in the middle of a political appraisal and people need to plot and organize. But this is possible only if you give yourself possibility and how do you say that, if you give yourself, we all have this program, these timelines, and what we need to achieve. And I really love what Priya said when about this very important appraisal that happened a few years ago, because this is what our space meant to be. We are institutions, of course. We've been institutionalizing our work in our space, but actually what we are offering and trying to create is a counter proposition of what an institution is that is able to welcome pause, transition. We've been into 3 transitions. This one is the biggest of our life, but we've been pausing for 3 years. We've been pausing for 1 year, and you need to do that for yourself. You need to do that for yourself and for the people with whom you are in this house. Because if you look at them, you know when it's possible to continue and move forward with the work and if it's not. So the way we behave and the way we feed and we enter and we exit that home of ourselves, because this is how we call it la maison, is really connected and tied to the life that we have and to the way we navigate Dakar and our hometown. Yes, and I think also that you have different ways and different word and different element that can define in a way or another what we are doing. Using the terminology curare or using the idea of soin as an element of what we're doing is really something that is a metaphor, but actually this is what we do. This is who we are, and this is also how we've been raised as human beings in Dakar. And so there is nothing that we read as something that doesn't belong to us. And even it doesn't belong to us, we reclaim it, we use it, and we make it what we want it to be. And this is what we need to do for ourselves, not for the others. So it's really a matter of choice and a matter of, yes, being able to look at yourself in the mirror also in a way or another. So, yes. And also, just to respond following what you were explaining regarding like you don't the space of radicality, I was thinking that actually each of us are enough. We don't have to do the whole work of the whole geography in which we find ourselves. We need to be in this together, and we all have our role. We all have a mission or a position that we want to take, or something that we are able to go to do or to give to the people with whom we are working, or to the community in which we find ourselves. The community is giving you as much as you're giving her. Perhaps she's giving you more. The other colleagues, friends that are working in the same art scene and context than you, they have their role, and they have a way to really channel this, and we have ours, and we are all enough for what we're doing. We need to learn consistently, but I think one thing that we decided not to do is to force us into something that is not what we know or want or even interested to be doing. So, and we know that Konu gonna do it brilliantly, and Konu and us together will make something that is relevant and interesting. So, yes, I think this is what I would like to say. But I hope I didn't miss any kind of question or something like that. I was delayed, so I was very concentrated in the YouTube, and I'm sorry if I missed something.
Hi, I had introduced earlier myself. This is Ajay from NAYAB. Anyways, you know, I was listening to this word coming again and again, failure. And I'm not too sure whether we hold the same connotations in our heads to that word. So just wanted a little bit of elaboration on that bit. Shamini was talking about the fear of letting people down. You know, of course, Priyanka talked about how she was able to cancel whatever was scheduled for a larger cause that she perceived needed a better care. So what, as so to say, the torchbearers of society's conscience, you know, if I may use that term, what is success or failure for you? Is it your personal goals? Is it institutions? Is it the people who are funding? What are the degrees of freedom that would kind of, you know, allow you or disallow you from doing something that you wanted to do? So a bit of that discussion, I think, would help.
Go for it.
of societies.
Failure. Yeah, I think well spoken. Let's define it. What does it mean to everybody? It means different things. It's kind of unquantifiable. I mean, when I was talking about what I said, I guess letting people down is this week. I've got a list. On a monthly basis, can I meet the salaries of my team? On a yearly basis, looking at where I'm trying to go with MMCA, have we gone anywhere? Is anyone talking about us? What are they saying? What have I managed to do with training? Everybody who's got to be there in the case of, when I'm not there, and so on. I think further along, there are all these kinds of failures that I think about. Ultimately, I'm a mother. It's just the human condition that I'm speaking to there when I say, I'm worried that I'm going to let people down. I have a job to do. And I'm sure that's the case with everybody here. They'll have their failures that are in little bottles, bigger ones, or the little lists, the bigger lists. So that's kind of what I was, I suppose, speaking about, that they come in all shapes and sizes. And they're there more than I think about the successes, perhaps. And maybe that's maybe you can divide curators into into one, those that think about that analogy of the glass half full, half empty, but then somebody said to me, but you can refill it. So I was like, okay, yeah. So there's always an opportunity to begin again. And I've heard something as well through the talks of my colleagues here that was also, I was thinking about, particularly actually you said you change your times. And I thought that's just a little switch. Amazing. Seasonal, like we always have this opportunity to renew, and we're doing it constantly. Like every 3 years is something that happens again. And maybe that's just worth bearing in mind when it comes to thinking about when we have to do this exercise that involves thinking about what we do.
All right. I guess a word that came up in Fatima's thing, which maybe we've spoken before. Fatima said something which maybe we've spoken before. We've been speaking a lot about community. I also come from like a socially engaged art practice background, and community has always been important. But again, sorry to keep going back to the not enough bit, because I guess that's where the drive also comes from. But at some level, I'm also thinking, we have a safe space. Often we are. If you're lucky, we're able to create safe spaces. If you're lucky, we have an audience who keep coming back, who, find it comforting, enervating, just happy, or, just to be together in a program and an exhibition, to meet each other, to see familiar faces, that they feel like they can say their thing. So if we're lucky, we create a safe space. In Calcutta, I think all of us feel like we are in a bit of a safe space politically in the country, because we are not governed by the ruling dispensation. But sometimes I'm worried that community may be not enough when it comes to changes, or when it comes to a crisis, because maybe we're not doing enough to organize. How do we go to create these third spaces where people can also come together and mobilize and organize? I feel like, okay, yeah, we know all these people, we're friends with so many people we have these solidarities and networks, but when it comes to it, doctors are much better at organizing and getting on the streets and bringing us along with them. But if a professor at a university gets arrested for saying something, or an artist gets hauled into court, or suddenly somebody's work is destroyed, I feel like we don't have the resources to organize. We've not done enough to put ourselves in those positions, even if we've so far been lucky to create at least the community space and the safe space. But that one step further in the time of crisis, which sometimes I feel is coming, or is there at our doorstep, crisis we end up ignoring because things happen and we don't know how to organize and collectivize around it. So I'm just wondering, whether you think that's too much to expect, or if there's something that we can do going forward. Just worried. Any lessons from elsewhere are part of the world as well?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's a question. I was also say that that's a question to the room, because this is a community at large. It's not just those of us who are sitting here in terms of responding to it, but I think it is something that all of us think about. Where will we look when there is, I mean, there are crises and there are crises, and it is important to continue to be in these spaces together, because I think already we sense a certain kind of solidarity even just in 2 days of talking to each other. There are very vulnerable things that we've been able to put on the table, we've been able to articulate in others that I think are just things we perceive about what someone's ability and possibility of being in community with you is in that kind of situation. So I think it's, the resources are there, and they do emerge in times of crisis. I wasn't here last year during the protests. I was in Delhi when the Nirbhaya protests happened in 2012, and yeah, many things did emerge that you couldn't believe could emerge so quickly in the face of something that felt truly like a crisis, an emergency, a paradigm shift. And of course, things may not have changed in the ways that we would have liked them to, or to the extent we would like them to change. But that is the kind of incremental spirit that we have to keep going, as exhausting and fatiguing as it also is. But let me not.
And as Justine said, get a lawyer.
Pro bono, preferably.
Always have a lawyer.
But I also think it's about who gets to, like, learning from who already knows how to organize really well. I don't think that, like, just in my experiences living in the UK, after living, I was in the Arab world, where I'm originally from, during the uprisings, and lots of the artists, everybody was getting involved, but it was just because people were coming from a context where, you know, like, you don't believe the government's going to fix everything. And then I moved to London, and in the UK, people kind of think that the government will fix everything. And so there wasn't the tools for organizing, and I think that there's something about being in solidarity with lots of other people. I think that's all right. I think there's some people that want to organize and want to collect, and there are going to be a lot of arts contexts that actually don't see that at all as their remit or space. And I think that's okay. I think it's also about alliances and learning together.
And I also think it's important to keep organizing.
You can't be complacent about it.
Yeah. To still, like, you know, keep on going to protests, or just to be active in one way to another, just keep on organizing. It's important because, you know, there's just only so much you can do within perimeter of an institution. Or community. So it's really important to not forget this the spirit as well, that to still show up and in one way or another, like if you cannot be there physically, but just to show up in solidarity.
So hi, I think I've also introduced myself. A phenomena that I've experienced in my art journey, I paint as well. And what I could notice in the 2 days was that when I was doing my first exhibition 2 years back, I painted a lot of monochromes, figurative monochromes, and I made a few art pieces based on embroidery which comes from Iran, which in my community in Punjab called Fulkari. Ratan must be knowing about this. And the grandmothers normally weave it in villages for the grandchildren's wedding. My curator said that Fulkari should be the pitch because we need a voice for your art. Now here also a lot of you are talking about violence, problems, revolutions, and representing a lot of groups. There could be people who are not very affected by these things mentally, the things going around wrong, but they're constituted that way that they are very indifferent to the outer voices, and they're very cool and composed. And they just produce art as a medium of probably de-stressing themselves, or their inner voice comes out. So I had an exhibition at Jahangir last month, and I didn't have a story to tell. But somebody in the exhibition hall had a beautiful story around each piece. So as a curator, don't you think it's a little unjustified, and odds are against people like me who don't always want to push forward an agenda of a particular problem or a community or a disadvantage? We come from a normal family and we see the problems, but we kind of isolate our minds from the problems, and we just produce art from very special part of our heart, but not to give a social messaging. So I saw that whole day you guys were talking about ideas which are very radical. But say if I don't have radical ideas, but I paint from a very pure point of view, do I at all get an opportunity to even exhibit with curators like you? Or do I have to create a problem and then tell you that I got this disease or somebody got this problem? No, I'm being very honest with you.
There's loads of problems.
We
all got loads of problems.
I'm being very honest. I've been painting from, just if you allow me to speak a minute more, I've been painting from I was 5 years old, but in my state, which is Punjab, it's not considered a very masculine activity. So our fathers normally discourage us from art and say, "Khelo, play. Why are you sitting, and painting?" So I left art when I was in my teenage and prepared and cracked this very tough exam and joined the civil services, and which is fine. And I got the freedom to paint after I got some position in my life when my father was no more guiding what I have to do. But now I feel another crisis that when I talk to some curator, and they see that this guy comes from a point of privilege, he has no pain in his life, he's not in a war zone, they don't just entertain my proposal. So what do you do for people like me? Can you please tell? I'm sorry. I'm being very honest. Yeah. And here also I would love to appreciate that, if you allow me to add something, I appreciate the way the Western world works, because I've seen that in the West there's a lot of inclusion and diversity, and we always make a chip on our shoulder if we are from other parts of the world, thinking that we need to be represented, and we always follow their standards and their universities. So I think, how do a person like me, or there may be a lot of people like me, how do we fit in without a problem? Yeah.
That's a problem.
I've been told this by very senior curators. In Bombay, very senior art patrons came to Jahangir and told me, "We want your art, we love your art." But a lot of people said, "What's your story? You're not telling me anything. There's no..." And somebody who makes an issue about it gets a lot of leverage. So how do I deal with this? I'm sorry if I have sounded awkward.
No, I think something that's important to acknowledge, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Is that we are but 8 curators amongst many curators, and we're speaking about our individual purview and commitment to our practice, just like you spoke about your purview and commitment to your practice. And it's not, there are artists whose work I love so deeply, but I am not the curator for them. And I think that's also part of it. It's this profound relationship of care and sharing, and you have to find your counterpart, the curator that contextualizes and supports your practice in the right way, and a desire to be an artist that every curator loves is a failure, to use our term, is inherently a failure in and of itself. And I think that's something, there's nothing wrong with not having a problem that you're addressing in your work. And I think that's a beautiful and profound thing. No, you should,
you don't have problems.
But I think something that's important is that there's so many different art worlds. There are so many different sites for expression and exhibition, and it's not a bad thing to not be for everyone.
There will be scope for.
Yes.
Actually, you have created a lot of safety for yourself. No,
just one part in your entire question, the West is not inclusive in any way. No, no, there.
I don't want to debate or argue, but I feel that we all go to these cities and are able to express our problems, isn't it?
I understand.
And we come back following their norms, their university standards, and we also copy their accents to feel cool about ourselves.
Okay.
Whereas we have our own accents also. We can, at home we speak in our own accent, but when we come outside we... So all I'm saying is, but then we say they're bad and they're racist. What is this?
I'll not continue this. I just find that the fact that we, I'm including myself in this, are able to travel to the West and see what we're seeing or learn what we're learning itself is a huge amount of privilege. So I think we just have to be really aware of that part, which is not copy-pasted and attached to even every person in this room, because they've not had those privileges to go to the West or learn from the West and adopt those methods or critique those methods. That's a very unique privilege that we have. Everyone in this room doesn't have that. We just have to be very aware of that part. So that's it. That's it.
Okay, then.
Let's have another.
Hello, I'm Brendan. I'm an editor in New York. It's really wonderful to be here, and thank you for your to the panel for the wonderful presentations the last 2 days. I have a question about institutional memory, and specifically to the curators who work like Amal and Mohammed with ephemeral or site-specific projects where installation views and record keeping are really important for people to discover your projects, learn about them, whether they're 10,000 miles away or whether it's 5 years hence. I'm thinking about a place in New York called Artist Space that goes back to the 1970s. It started as an alternative space, and some may say it's institutionalized now, but they have an amazing website where every single exhibition going back to the 1970s has installation views, checklists, and press releases, so you can see exactly the thinking and the way an exhibition looked, and it's an amazing resource. And the Museum of Modern Art's website also has an incredible archive of the exhibition history. I mean, Amal said that maybe we need to dissolve some of the institutions, and MoMA might be one of those, but I guess for the question for the panel is, how would you like your, yeah.
I've been dissolved.
You've been dissolved, right. For anyone who would like to answer this question about how you would like to see your work memorialized, or the record keeping, and how do you build capacity for that, even if it's just digital archiving and that kind of thing? Because I think one thing that you've showed us all today is that the work that you are doing, you don't want to exist in a vacuum. You want people to learn about it, whether they're students or artists or future curators. So yeah, the question is about record keeping and institutional memory.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can talk about KNMA, where I work, and for us, archiving and cataloging our own collection, but then archiving the programs that we're doing and documenting video, audio, as well as photo documenting all our exhibitions, the programs and different kinds of programs and workshops, etc., has been a huge important part of our 15 years of institutional history. And though we have not been putting it and made it accessible online, we did attempt this large project going back to our archive during the pandemic, but it started and then it stopped. But gradually we are working on it as we work towards the opening of our new building, because it's again also the positioning of the museum and this small amount of time in terms of 15 years is nothing in institutional life, right? So the story of the museum that we want to tell. And this question also becomes all the more important for us, because in the span of approximately 6 to 12 months, we have doubled up, from a strength of 40 to 50, we have just doubled up, so there is so it's almost a new museum in a way, with that kind of numbers. And so holding the memory of this old institution versus this new location where we will be. So I think the oldest staff is feeling all the more urgent. How do you make these transferences across colleagues, across what we are, because we won't be what we are, we will be something new. So in exploring this and going on this journey anew, and together and making this, building this. So there are these lots of pushes and pulls, and because we've gradually increased in numbers as the projects have grown. So the communications haven't been that strong in terms of passing of knowledge. So institutional memory also implies these kind of formal, informal transferences. So archiving, of course, record keeping is important. So record keeping exists, but even making it accessible internally to this new audiences that we have internally, like in terms of this old stuff, is also interesting as much as is important as much making it online. So we're in that process right now. So to answer it briefly.
Yeah, just to
and we've started. Yeah.
Just to kind of follow up on what you said, because it's funny. Because in the Kunsthalle we have like an amazing archive from like all institutions, and when I arrived, the website listed all exhibitions since its foundation, so like more than 154 years old of exhibitions and artists, and I found it really so linear. There's like little informations about it, but then what I looked is that the archive and the photo archive that we hold showed way more than just the listing of exhibitions. So one initiative that I did also was to cancel this linearity archive from the website, but more to think of a new platform where all these photographs and could be more in conversations with stories and what actually happened. Because I don't wanna see just a list of names of artists exhibiting, but I wanna see what this exhibition meant. So like newspapers, clippings from everything, and so the whole our archive department now is doing a whole research on all these materials and creating this these films with living members of the community talking about their stories. And one like former president of the foundation, who's now nearly 90 years old, is like speaking for like 2 hours about his time at the Kunsthalle and telling his stories, and so like really reaching back and creating more a platform that is not so linear, but also really connecting with the center being the stories and not just the lists or the names. So I think like to think of the archive not as a scroll down, but more as a zoom in effect.
I think I really agree with you. We haven't published it online or made it visible, but we collect these things in the same way. And I think the process of working on the Palais de Danse, which is for some people the legacy of Hepworth, for other people it is a place where they met, fell in love and got married later, and it's nothing to do with Hepworth at all. And for some it's a mixture of both. And I think that the learning through that process is that one of the very generous things that many people did is they gave us images or photographs or things that kind of elicited memories or their own histories that are becoming part of what actually other people in the Palais will see when they come. And conversely, I think what would be really nice, and I don't even know if you wouldn't have to document it or track it, but sometimes we see that I'd be curious to know about Justine Namal's response to this too, is sometimes we've come across documentation of how people experienced more the public art or the participatory art projects in unusual places, whether it's in a library, whether it's in somebody's home. When you come across these things, so when your own community is actually documenting and keeping these things, it becomes part of a larger social community memory that is outside yourself. And that to me, I think will be really interesting.
Yeah, I also just want to say one thing, and maybe this is related. One of the most interesting things for us is actually our visitors book, because it has all kinds of comments, because they can be anonymous as well. and they're not only good things, there are also some crazy comments. So I think those are really important. Like for me, every day, that's the first thing I check even before I get into the office, because I have to cross my gallery first to get into my office, and it's right there at the entrance. So that's one thing. And yeah, like our collection is entirely digitized and online, but also I think we're the one institution, and this has happened from before I joined also, that has a mandate to produce a book with every exhibition. It's the toughest part of my job, and that keeps me very busy. And the fact that we try and keep the price really low, so really affordable. Because most exhibitions in museums and all have like these big tomes that cost some 3,000, 5,000 rupees, which is like very expensive, or sometimes they're not even available. So we make sure to keep it really low that even students can, you know, afford it. So within that, how to work with design, aesthetics, paper, all of that to also produce a good book. So it's also one of the things that I like doing, making books. So yeah, I think.
I was just going to say about, I was really struck yesterday when you were talking about the person who you work with, one of your collaborators, when you're working with archives, is the man that lived in the house of right. And I feel like in institutions you have these people that have sometimes, if you're lucky, my colleague Mike Gohan, he just passed away at the Serpentine. His funeral was yesterday. He was the archive keeper. He did every single show. Every single artist that's shown at the Serpentine since 1970 worked with Mike Gohan. And he knows everything. And I was just thinking about these people. And actually there's so much that cannot be documented when you do very long projects, when it involves sitting around till 3 a.m. with camp for 5 years, working on an amazing there's just stuff that's not documentable. And I think there's also a privileging also of certain types of projects that institution makes, like exhibitions, that can turn into a book very easily, and there are others that are harder. And so the strategy I did at the Serpentine of 15 years of like so many contributors, so many artists, so many projects, was actually share methodologies of working that came out of each project rather than full documentation. So it was always about how we did it and invitations to people to reflect on how we did it and reflect that and share that back through books again, rather than anything. And it's, you know, a fat book that actually maybe not many people can get, but I just wanted to keep something there as well, and just it being about how and methodology rather than everything, because I think the different stories and the memories live with people, but you know, how to capture it all needs a lot of resource. So yeah.
Go ahead. Just to add to this point, we've also initiated a series of books under this title of Institutional Memory. The first one was a compendium of everything that we've done in terms of exhibitions, but a small thin book, which is like a takeaway. So it was released on our 2020 10 years. But after that, the following series have been commissioned with artists. So with Ravi Agarwal and Asim Waqif, and giving them access to parts of the museum that you easily wouldn't. So Ravi Agarwal working when photographing the museum when we were rebuilding our new space, and Asim Waqif interviewing our entire support staff team who manages the collection, who works with the collection, the installers and everybody, and interviewing each one of them in their space of working, and now weaving all the stories. So, and it's called Many Lives of Art, and you know, so weaving the art that they think about and the stories, their own stories, because they're all of them have been working with us for 14, 15 years. So, and there's rich stories in there, and the kind of art that they have seen is like the knowledge that they carry.
I was just going to say something. Oh, sorry.
We're filibustering. Go ahead.
Oh, just quickly, that I think there's an element of the question that you raised, which is quite fascinating to think through in terms of ethics, because of who gatekeeps that archive for the institution. There'll be a lot of material in there which is related and would come under the jurisdiction of privacy. I actually first met Ratan via, well, in person, but a conversation that you had with me where you told me that you had read an email that I had written in 1999. And he was doing his PhD research at Tate Modern. And it was just so disarming to think that he'd read my emails, which had been filed by the Tate. And this was in 20, this is like, I don't know, 20 years later or something. And, okay, so I didn't have any, I wasn't like, there was nothing, I didn't have anything to hide, but I mean, I don't know how much he read, but I remember actually, this is when we think about, archives, when I was in Pakistan, and this has been kind of the theme of getting here, when I was in Pakistan, but I saw this big signboard at a roundabout, and it was the time of Julian Assange and what happened with him, and it was this big advert for sanitary towels called Whisper, and it said, WikiLeaks, but Whisper doesn't. And it was seriously, what we hold on to, they have such a great sense of humor, the Pakistanis. They should be here. That's what they have that Indians don't have. I can say that. No, but what we have to protect in an archive, and we're doing an archiving project for an architect, Minette De Silva, and there's a lot of information that we will archive for the institution, for the family, but we will be very careful. I'm looking at the person that's leading that project about whether we can share it. And I'm just thinking back to that in relation to what you're saying and how think about all the institutional correspondences that have happened around very recent, a whole range of things. Imagine how is that being looked after, and this is not about the exhibitions, where will that sit?
There is an archive.
Last word from Kitty?
No, not last word. I just wanted to say that when we started the hub, and it's just what we have here is ephemeral. You can't possibly translate the energy, the feeling, the sense of togetherness in any archive. But we felt from the very beginning that we need to document everything that we do here from the very beginning. And in fact, the same camera team comes, so they know us, they know what to expect. We video document everything. And about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, we started transcribing every word that was spoken at the hub. So everything that you say will get transcribed. just saying. And everything, all failures, everything. But also the fact that I don't know what that means from a privacy point of view. Now we're getting into ethical issues. Everything is accessible unless specifically asked by, maybe I think 1 or 2 curators specifically asked not to share. Everything is available online on our website through one of the video sharing channels. So it's been used as a living archive by students or others who want to listen to it and come back to ideas raised before or revisit things that were said. And there are people here who come back year and year again, and they carry a memory and an archive themselves. Like Meera here, she's been coming for so many years, right? And you photograph us every year, and you photograph things. So you have your own archive, and there's so many of us who come back year after year. So I think our building a memory of or a bank or an image or a memory of a place or an event could be wide and could also be small. It doesn't have to be a giant thing, but it's important to keep that activity, and it's a deliberate, it's a lot of hard work that goes into it. All our exhibitions are in books. We don't do catalogs, but they're in books. But it's just a way to think about it, and because once the exhibitions are over, or once these things are over, then all you have is the kind of feeling that you get from it, but also maybe some way you can revisit it at some point. So just saying that do this.
We are at the end of our time together, but and as much as we don't want this to end, it won't end because we are all the living archives of the hub. And so,
curators of grief
and holding many, many things. I want to just stand and give a huge hand to the experimenter team, firstly,
all of us,
to all the folks recording, to the speakers, to Pratik and Priyanka, of course, and we will see you next year.
Yeah, and just to quickly say a few words of thanks. Thank you for everybody to come here, but also to stay with us these many hours together. I know it's not a very comfortable place, but it's a place of care. So we need to continue to come together and discuss, and thank you for making this possible. The hub is made up of all of you, and you make it. So thank you first for coming, and I'll hope to see you all next year. And Priyanka will say a few words.
No, no words. Can I please have every member of Team Experimenter up? And then can we please clap for them until they're not tired of hearing it? Oh, Ehan, come on. Aditi, Ratul, Jishnu, Mohor, Shohini, Neil. Everybody. Josh is not here. Some of our colleagues aren't here. Everybody. And also Shobik, Ronjit, can we have everyone? And honestly, you guys, you're a lesson. You're a lesson in everything. Like the amount of endless, relentless, hard work, but with such joy, with the best dance steps, almost like beating any other dance troupe in the country, you know? So I don't know what to say except like ingratitude forever. Thank you. Thank you and have a great evening. For those of you who asked me, Pushpakant and Pakyaraja's show will be on for a little while longer today. So please feel free to go, and I think Pushpa will be there too. Yes. Can we also, Shamne Asho please? Shamne Asho, Shamne Asho. Shobhik, Ronjit, Pankaj. I mean, they have done every little detail check, hundreds of tech checks, setups, like it's impeccable. You don't even feel like something so major is going on is happening. We're eating and chilling. Thank you. Darun korecho. Vijay ji, thank you. Prashad dar kothay? Prashad. Acha jai hok shobai, thank you very much. Okay, all right then. On that note.